Right, so now we're thinking about colour, because the other major event in my life this summer was a new book by Hazel Turner called The Art of the Limited Colours. As a way forward, if you're going out painting, the less you have to carry, the easier life is. The general idea is when you're painting, that you want to create the feeling of the place or your reaction to the place that you're trying to paint or the thing you're trying to paint. So you're thinking of mood, you're thinking of atmosphere. You're not trying to produce the actuality of what's there. It's your impression, your feeling about it, your emotional reaction to it, more than the need to be absolutely accurate. If you want to be accurate, you're doing something like botanical painting, which is a different thing entirely. So when you're doing this, you don't need to be absolutely accurate with your colours. You don't have to have absolutely that green, that red, that blue. What you're looking for is a collection of colours that will marry nicely together. And the way to achieve that is to limit your palette to a red of some sort, a blue of some sort, and a yellow of some sort. Now today I'm restricting myself to burnt sienna as my red. So a red doesn't have to be red, it can be tending that way. Raw sienna for my yellow. And actually, because those two are earth colours, they go beautifully together. And my blue is the watercolourist workhorse French ultramarine, or rather ultramarine, because I have now discovered, just a piece of chit chat for you, if it's French ultramarine, it's red shade. If it's ultramarine, it's green shade, and green shade is supposed to be the better of the two. I actually can't tell you the difference between them, but then, you know, that's life. Anyway, so we've got burnt sienna, raw sienna, and ultramarine. Now, if you look at the picture, you will see that in actual fact, those were good colours to choose because those are the sort of colours that are in the picture. The only thing that is really startlingly different is his red shoes and his red hat. If I use the burnt sienna for those, the picture won't look wrong. In fact, people won't notice. You'll be surprised how many different colours, how many colours that aren't in the vision before you can get in. I have a picture of home of the East Gate at Chester. And through the East Gate, you can see a bus. Now, Chester buses are a sort of dirty maroon, they used to be. And this one is scarlet. But nobody says to me, that bus is wrong. They just don't notice, don't see. And it marries with the colours in the picture. So the fact that you're painting his hat in burnt sienna isn't going to make a lot of odds to the picture. It'll still produce the mood of the nice, warm evening light that's there in the painting. Right. Now, quit chatting and get on with it. So what I've done is to wet those three pans in my paint box. The ultramarine, how are we doing? No, you can't see. I've wet the three pans, the ultramarine, the burnt sienna, and the raw sienna. So I haven't wet the others, so I'm not tempted to use them. One of the problems about having them in a place of colours like this is that you are tempted to use every colour in the thing to achieve what you want. So try to remember to restrict what you're doing to the three colours that you have chosen, or in this case, that I have chosen. Right, so, and I think when you're painting alla prima, which is what we're doing now, the thing you want to do is to paint the main protagonist first. you can float in the background afterwards. If you're making this a study and it's a studio painting and you've done all your sketches, blah, 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 and you're going to lay in washes, then obviously you will start with the background and work that way. But in this case, we're going to start with a bloke. And I'm going to start with the dark of the bloke as far as I can. Now, if I mix ultramarine with burnt sienna, I'm wondering if this is actually burnt sienna. Is that a better burnt sienna? No, that's not burnt sienna. There it is. Okay. So if you mix ultramarine with burnt sienna, you get a sort of grey. Let me find a piece of paper to splash a few colours on. So I get a sort of grey like this. Now I can make it more blue by adding blue. And I think that's a better bet for this particular picture.
You want to bring that into shot, ma'am.
Sorry.
There you are.
That was the mix that I had. It's very brown looking. I wanted it more blue looking, so I've just added more blue to the mix. So I'm still mixing ultramarine and burnt sienna, but I'm varying the amount of each color that I put in to get the color that I want. So I think that's a good color. Don't think I've got enough paint to do what I want, so I'll increase the amount that I've got. And try again. That's a bit dark. So I'm only worrying about 2 colors. I think that will do. So I'll clean the brush. There's a bit of water on it. I pick up the color that I've made and I float it into my picture. I'm going to go over his hat as well, just to get the shadow in. So it comes round here, a straight line across there. It does wick out that way a little bit. Comes down the back of his head, all of his face. Leave out that patch of light on the front of his body. Go over his arm, really doesn't matter. It comes down here, there's a sort of little bit there. Now I want to be careful here because if you remember when we were looking at light, the light caught the back of his hand. So I don't want to lose that. But only the back of his hand. So I need to just leave a little thin slither there. There's the shirt sticking out. This comes straight down, straight over the dog. Ça ne fait rien. This is all shadow. Straight over the dog. Again, the light is catching his face, the top of his face, and the top of his nose. But otherwise, we can go on down. It catches down here on the man's leg. The front of the man's leg is catching the light, but the whole of his shoe, apart from the front edge, we keep on working down the dog again. Just the front of the dog's leg is catching the light. Haven't dogs got bendy legs? Quite interesting the way there are far more bends in a dog's leg than you imagine when you first try and draw a dog. This was for me. That leg is in shadow apart from the front, and the shoe, this leg That's pretty well. That's pretty well as far as you want to go. Now, if I had any more of that colour, and I haven't, I could put in these waves here, because they are part of the shadow. And there's another one here which helps to define his body. Another one up here. So we're clear that he is being shown against the water. And another bit down here. Just putting it on in almost in a dry brush fashion, partly because not a lot of paint left, and partly because well, you know, it's scratchy sand. And this area down here is also, I really have run out of paint. That area there is also in shadow. So I've got the figure in now. I've got his shadows defined. I can start to play with local color now, if I want to, which is obviously the next thing to do. So his shirt is vaguely blue. So if I make a thin wash of blue and take it over his shirt, and his pants, because they seem to be sort of vaguely blue as well. And just there, right. And I could use that blue in the background, just to, you know, put in some sort of effects in the background of the waves, and using that color to define that shape there. The little peak of the cap is catching the light, so you want to leave that as white paper. And again, using the paint to define that light edge there. And then we've got some light coming down here, some light bluey tones of the wave. It goes a lot darker there, so I'll have to play with that later. And then this is coming down here, there's a bit of light. Then we change to the sandy colors, don't we? So the sandy color is obviously going to be ultramarine, not ultramarine. What am I talking about?
Raw sienna.
Raw sienna, right. Okay. And I don't want it to be too noisy. I just want it to be there to suggest the spaces between the man and the dog. And while I'm there, you can see that a lot of this stand has been kicked up where people have been walking, and this should be coming out in the and while I've got that color on, I can do the dog, I think, because the dog is definitely a darker shade. And he's in silhouette almost. Except for his head. His head isn't. His head is whitish. Right? Oh, so good. If I really get some quite thick burnt sienna on this, I can put in his legs. This leg here. And he's got a white sock on and red shoes. Right. And put his arm in. His arm is in shadow. Now we're going over that shape with raw sienna, burnt sienna, with the shadow underneath. Just gives you the shadow there anyway. And if I clean the brush and just pull that color over that light patch, you have it there, right? Put in his face. And a bit of his neck. Right. Now, if I get the color even deeper, if you want more color, twist the brush in the paint and paint his hat. Now need to make a dark now to dress up those shadows a bit, because this shadow is actually quite strong here. There's a bit on his back there too. And we've got that area there too. Almost a touch of yellow in there, isn't there? Just there. And I need a real dark for his hair. Whoops, that was meant to happen. I have inadvertently gone in the wrong color. I'm after a real dark, so I need a lot of paint. Very little water. So I'm twisting and twisting and twisting the brush to get it to be as dark as possible. Wow. So if we put in his hair, the brush is getting a bit clumsy for this. Where other have we got real darks? Well, he seems to be carrying something in his hand, but I think I'll leave that. Is that what it is? Right, well, Yeah, yeah. And then there's the doggy's nose, isn't there? Doggy's nose and his eyes. Oops, that's a bit large. It's not meant to be that big. We do have a shadow here, don't we? Down the front of the doggy, where his ears are. That's a bit heavy, so I'm going to take it out a bit with water. It has defined his ears a bit better. He should actually be a lot darker than I've got him anyway, I think. Don't know why I have a fight with these paints all the time. Come on, you. Yeah, so if you hurry, you get disasters. A little touch of yellow on the waves here. I really ought to wet that first. And then add a touch of yellow to suggest the translucence of the waves. I'll add a little bit more dark to the bottom of the wave here. And here. There we are. That's the sort of inter alia. If I make the lines on this side a little less big than the ones on that side, it seems to give him space to move into. But what you end up with is a picture where the colours live together happily. Yeah, a reasonable remembrance of what it was that you were looking at in Darwin, Australia, all those years ago.